The manila envelope trembled in my hands as I stared at the return address: State Medical Board. After 35 years of caring for the children of Oakridge, my license renewal should have been routine. But this time was different. My own daughter had filed a formal complaint questioning my mental competence. I pressed the envelope to my chest and closed my eyes, remembering the moment 3 months ago when I overheard Jennifer telling Daniel, "In my kitchen, Mom's slipping. She forgets appointments, misplaces her prescription pad. It's only a matter of time before she makes a serious medical error. Someone needs to step in before she hurts a child." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I never imagined that someone would be my own flesh and blood. The same daughter whose medical school tuition I'd paid by taking extra night shifts at the hospital. The same son whose tech startup I'd quietly funded when investors pulled out at the last minute. Now I held the board's decision in my hands, and everything I'd built hung in the balance. I'm Dr. Rebecca Anderson, though most of my patients and their parents call me Dr. Becky. For the past 35 years, I've run Anderson Children's Clinic in the heart of Oakridge, a practice I built from nothing after my husband left when Jennifer was 8 and Matthew was 5. The clinic sits on Elm Street in the medical district, a Victorian house converted into medical offices, with a colorful waiting room filled with books and toys. Every morning at 6:15, I unlock the front door, review patient charts before Maria arrives, and prepare for the day ahead. This morning ritual has remained unchanged for decades, a constant in a life that's weathered many storms. My examination rooms aren't fancy. The equipment is serviceable rather than cutting edge. Still, generations of families have trusted me with their children's health. I've treated newborns who grew up to bring their own children to my practice. I've guided families through childhood illnesses, celebrated recoveries, and helped countless parents navigate the challenges of raising healthy kids. When Jennifer and Matthew were growing up, they often spent afternoons at the clinic doing homework in my office or helping Maria organize patient files. I'd hoped they might follow in my footsteps, but Jennifer chose marketing and Matthew pursued technology. There's more security in corporate America than private practice, Mom, Jennifer told me when she changed her major in college. I couldn't argue. I'd spent years struggling to keep the clinic afloat while raising them alone. I remember the day Jennifer graduated from business school. I sat in the audience bursting with pride, mentally calculating the sacrifices that had made this moment possible. The vacations never taken, the house repairs postponed, the retirement savings depleted to cover her tuition. But seeing her in her cap and gown, confident and accomplished, made every sacrifice worthwhile. "I'm going to take care of you someday, Mom," she promised at her graduation dinner. "You've worked hard enough." That was before she met Daniel at her marketing firm, ambitious Daniel with his designer suits and country club membership. I tried to welcome him into our small family, inviting them for Sunday dinners, offering advice only when asked, giving them a generous down payment for their first home despite my limited savings. At first, Jennifer visited regularly. She'd stop by the clinic for lunch, call to check in a few times a week. But after the wedding, those visits became less frequent. Sunday dinner shifted from my cozy dining room to their sleek penthouse downtown. Gradually, I noticed a change in how Jennifer looked at me, with concern that bordered on condescension. "Mom, you really should hire more help at the clinic," she'd say. "You're not getting any younger." I'd laugh it off. "I'm only 60, Jen. Hardly at death's door." But behind my dismissive responses, I worried. Not about my competence. I knew I was still an excellent physician, but about the growing distance between us. The balance shifted dramatically when I turned down Jennifer and Daniel's offer to invest my retirement savings in a real estate fund Daniel was managing. "It's guaranteed returns, Mom," he insisted. "You can't keep working forever, and your savings aren't enough." He wasn't wrong about my modest savings. Medicine had given me purpose, but not prosperity. My clinic served many patients on Medicaid or payment plans. I could have joined a corporate practice years ago for better pay, but I valued my independence and my relationships with patients too much. I appreciate the offer, Daniel, but I'm comfortable with my financial advisor's conservative approach, I told him. Besides, I'm not planning to retire anytime soon. The disappointment in his eyes was unmistakable. Jennifer's reaction was cooler. "That's certainly your choice, Mom," she said, using a tone that reminded me uncomfortably of how I spoke to stubborn patients. "But don't expect us to support you if you run out of money." I didn't tell them about my other investment, a scholarship foundation for medical students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Dr. Eleanor Wright, my mentor from medical school, had approached me about co-founding it 10 years ago. What began as a modest contribution had expanded to a significant financial commitment that fulfilled me in ways that were increasingly important as I entered what I considered the most meaningful phase of my career. The first concerning incident occurred last winter. I'd been working extended hours during a particularly nasty flu season. After a 14-hour day, I stopped by Jennifer and Daniel's penthouse to drop off a birthday gift for my grandson, Noah. I must have looked exhausted because Jennifer immediately took my arm and led me to their sleek leather sofa. "Mom, you don't look well," she said, her forehead creased with worry. "Have you been forgetting things lately? You seem disoriented." "I'm tired, Jen," I explained. "I've seen 38 patients today, most of them with high fevers." "At your age, that's too much," Daniel interjected from the doorway. "My mother says doctors over 60 have twice the rate of medical errors." I was too exhausted to point out the statistical fallacy in his statement. Instead, I visited briefly with Noah, who showed me his new tablet and whispered, "Grandma, can we go to the park tomorrow?" "Not tomorrow, honey," Jennifer answered for me. "Grandma needs to rest." Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs. The concerned glances between Jennifer and Daniel, the way they spoke about me rather than to me, the gentle but firm way they limited my time with Noah, citing concerns about my energy levels. The second incident was more alarming. I misplaced my prescription pad at the clinic, something that had never happened before. After a frantic hour of searching, Maria found it in the staff refrigerator underneath my lunch container. "You probably set it down while you were putting your lunch away," she said, relieved. "No harm done." But there was harm when Matthew found out. Maria, concerned about my stress levels, had innocently mentioned the incident when she ran into him at the grocery store. His reaction was swift. He showed up at my house that evening, pacing in my living room like a prosecutor making his case. "Mom, this is serious," he said, his voice sharp with concern. "A missing prescription pad could mean narcotics on the street. You could lose your license." "It wasn't missing, Matt," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "It was misplaced for an hour in a secure area of the clinic. No one has access to the staff kitchen except employees who undergo background checks. But what if it happens again? What if you misdiagnose a child because you're forgetting things? What if you prescribe the wrong medication?" His questions felt like slaps. In 35 years, I'd never had a malpractice claim, never been cited for any violation by the medical board. My patient satisfaction scores consistently ranked in the top percentile for our region. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully. "But a misplaced prescription pad doesn't indicate cognitive decline. It indicates I was busy and distracted on a hectic day." Matthew sat beside me, taking my hand in his. "Mom, I'm worried. Dad had early onset dementia. You know it can be genetic." My ex-husband Richard had indeed been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, but not until his late 60s. And after years of heavy drinking that I suspected had contributed to his condition. "I've been monitored regularly given the family history," I assured him. "My cognitive assessments always come back normal." "Those screenings can miss early signs," Matthew insisted, and you wouldn't necessarily notice yourself. That's the insidious thing about cognitive decline. The patient is often the last to know. That night after Matthew left, I sat in my garden with a cup of tea, troubled by his persistence. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. There was genuine concern in his voice, yes, but something else too. A certainty that felt premature, almost eager. I tried to dismiss the thought as uncharitable. Matthew loved me. He was looking out for my best interests and the safety of my patients. The next month passed uneventfully until a new patient, Mrs. Vanessa Taylor, brought her daughter Emma in for chronic stomach aches. Her symptoms suggested several possibilities from lactose intolerance to anxiety. I ordered appropriate tests and scheduled a follow-up. When they returned, Mr. Taylor accompanied them. He seemed oddly familiar, but I couldn't place him. Emma's tests indicated possible celiac disease requiring further evaluation. As I explained my findings and referral plan, Mr. Taylor interrupted, repeatedly with questions that felt more like a cross-examination than clarification. "And you're absolutely certain of this diagnosis, Dr. Anderson? You haven't overlooked anything? No possibility you've confused my daughter's chart with another patient's?" His questions were hostile, his manner aggressive. When he demanded a second opinion, I readily provided referrals to 3 pediatric gastroenterologists, which seemed to surprise him. "Of course you should get another perspective," I said. "That's good medical practice for any serious diagnosis." As they left, I remembered where I'd seen Mr. Taylor before. He was a client of Daniel's, mentioned occasionally in conversation. The connection seemed insignificant until 3 days later, when Maria brought me a certified letter from the state medical board. "Dr. Anderson," the letter began formally, "we are in receipt of a complaint questioning your fitness to practice medicine due to alleged cognitive impairment. Per state regulations, we are opening an investigation into this matter." The complaint was anonymous, but the timing and specificity of the allegations, referencing the misplaced prescription pad and misdiagnoses of patients, left little doubt about its source. My hands trembled as I set down the letter. "This is ridiculous," Maria said firmly. "Every doctor misplaces things occasionally. And that Taylor girl, the specialist called yesterday to confirm your preliminary diagnosis, was spot on." I sat heavily in my office chair. "Someone is trying to have my license suspended, Maria. Who would do that?" "You've got the most loyal patients in Oakridge," she said, bewildered. I didn't answer, but a suspicion was forming that made my stomach clench. That evening, I called Jennifer, trying to keep my voice casual as I asked if she'd seen the Taylors recently. "Rob and Vanessa? Yeah, we had dinner last weekend. Why?" "Their daughter is a patient. I was wondering how she's doing with her new specialist." A pause. "I didn't know Emma was your patient. Small world." "Very small," I agreed, waiting for her to say more. When she didn't, I asked directly, "Jen, did you discuss my practice with Rob? Perhaps mention that misplaced prescription pad?" "Mom, you know I wouldn't violate your privacy like that." Her voice had an edge I recognized from her childhood fibs. "But since you mention it, have you considered cutting back your hours? Or maybe joining a group practice where other doctors could help shoulder the load?" "My practice is fine, Jen. I'm fine." "Are you, though? Maria called Matt worried about you last week." This was news to me. "Maria called Matthew about what?" "She said you seemed tired, forgetful." "Mom, we're all concerned. No one's attacking you. We just want what's best for your health and your patient's safety." After we hung up, I called Maria. At home, something I rarely did. "Did you call Matthew last week to discuss concerns about me?" I asked without preamble. "What? Absolutely not," Maria said firmly. "Dr. Anderson, I've worked with you for 18 years. If I had concerns, I'd come directly to you." My mind raced. Jennifer was lying. But why? What could she possibly gain from undermining my practice? The next day, I had lunch with Eleanor at our usual cafe. Eleanor Wright had been my advisor. In medical school, had championed my career when female physicians were still relatively rare, and had become a dear friend over the decades. Now in her late 60s, she still taught part-time at the medical school and served as medical director of our scholarship foundation. The board investigation is concerning, but not catastrophic, she reassured me after I confided the situation. You have an impeccable record. They'll ask for statements from colleagues, review your charts, perhaps request a cognitive assessment. Be cooperative, transparent, and this will resolve in your favor. But why would Jennifer do this? I pushed my salad around my plate. What possible motivation could my daughter have for trying to end my career? Eleanor adjusted her glasses, her expression grave. Becky, is there anything of value Jennifer might access if you were declared incompetent? Property, investments, insurance policies? The question hit like a physical blow. My retirement savings are modest. There's the house, the clinic property, but those would only come to her and Matthew after my death. Unless you were deemed unable to manage your own affairs, Eleanor pointed out gently. In which case, as your closest relative, Jennifer would likely be appointed your guardian with control over your assets. That's absurd, I protested. Jennifer and Daniel live in a penthouse worth 3 times what my house is worth. He manages investment portfolios worth millions. Eleanor sipped her coffee. People in financial trouble often live in expensive homes. Has Daniel asked for money recently? Tried to involve you in investment opportunities? The venture real estate fund. Jennifer and Daniel's disappointment when I declined. Their increased scrutiny of my mental acuity afterward. A sickening suspicion formed. I need to find out if they're in financial trouble, I said slowly. But how? They'd never tell me. Start with public records, Eleanor suggested. Property liens, civil judgments, they're all searchable online. And perhaps visit the community health center. Tomorrow instead of Saturday. There's someone you should meet. The someone turned out to be Vivian Martinez, a former forensic accountant who now directed community outreach at the health center. After Eleanor made introductions, I explained my situation in general terms. I believe my daughter and son-in-law may be experiencing financial difficulties and targeting my assets as a solution, I said, feeling disloyal even speaking the words. Vivian's expression remained professionally neutral. Financial desperation can motivate people to act against their better nature, even against those they love. What makes you suspect financial problems? I described Jennifer and Daniel's behavior, their push for me to invest in their fund, their recent preoccupation with my retirement planning. Vivian nodded thoughtfully. With your permission, I could look into public records related to your daughter and son-in-law, foreclosure proceedings, tax liens, civil judgments. They leave paper trails. Would you be comfortable with that? It felt like a betrayal investigating my own daughter. But if Jennifer was indeed behind the complaint to the medical board, I needed to understand why. Yes, I decided. Please look. In the meantime, I'll cooperate fully with the board investigation. I have nothing to hide. The next week was grueling. The board investigator, Dr. David Cooper, conducted a thorough review of my practice. He interviewed Maria and my nurse practitioner, examined randomly selected patient charts, and observed me during consultations. He also required me to undergo a comprehensive cognitive assessment with a neuropsychologist. Through it all, I maintained my normal schedule, seeing patients, managing the clinic, even volunteering at the community health center. I tried to act as though my professional life wasn't hanging in the balance. Jennifer called daily, her concerns seemingly genuine. How are you holding up, Mom? This must be so stressful. I kept my responses vague, unwilling to give her information she might use against me. I'm fine, Jen. The investigation is going smoothly. "If you need character witnesses, Daniel and I would be happy to speak to the board," she offered. I thanked her politely, but said Eleanor and several other colleagues had already provided statements. After hanging up, I wondered if I was becoming paranoid. Could I be misjudging my own daughter? My doubt evaporated when Vivian called 2 days later. "Dr. Anderson, I found something you need to see. Can you come to my office today?" The documents Vivian showed me painted a disturbing picture. Jennifer and Daniel's penthouse had a second mortgage taken out 6 months ago. There were 3 credit card judgments against them in the past year. Most damning, Daniel was named in a civil lawsuit filed by former clients alleging mismanagement of investment funds. "He's underwater," Vivian said bluntly. "The lawsuit alone could ruin him professionally if it becomes widely known. The plaintiffs are alleging he moved their money into high-risk ventures without proper disclosure, and they lost substantial sums." "How substantial?" I asked, feeling numb. The filing claims damages of $2 million. The figure was staggering. Daniel managed portfolios of that size, but his personal assets nowhere near approach such an amount. If he lost the lawsuit, he'd be ruined. "How does any of this connect to having me declared incompetent?" I asked, though I feared I already knew. Vivian slid another document across the desk. "This is a copy of the trust you established after your divorce. It specifies that in the event of your death or incapacitation, all assets transfer to your children, including the clinic property, which, given commercial real estate values in Oakridge, is worth close to $28 million. The clinic property. I'd purchased the building 20 years ago when the elderly owner offered it at below market value, grateful for years of care I'd provided his wife. It had been a stretch financially at the time, but I'd recognized it as an investment in my future. The mortgage was now paid off, and the property value had tripled. Jennifer knows about the trust, I said slowly, but she also knows I have no intention of retiring or selling the clinic. Unless you were deemed mentally unfit to practice, Vivian pointed out, in which case the clinic would close, the property would likely be sold, and as your guardian, Jennifer would control the proceeds. Everything fell into place. Jennifer's sudden concern about my cognitive abilities, her friend Rob Taylor bringing his daughter to my clinic, then questioning my competence, the anonymous complaint to the medical board. Jennifer wasn't trying to protect me or my patients. She was trying to save her husband from financial ruin. "What do I do with this information?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "That depends on what outcome you want," Vivian said. "If you're looking to preserve your practice and your independence, documenting these findings might help counter any move Jennifer makes to have you declared incompetent. If you're looking to protect your daughter from legal consequences, that's a different conversation." I sat in silence, turning options over in my mind. My daughter had betrayed me in the most fundamental way, attacking my professional competence, my personal dignity, and my autonomy. Yet she was still my daughter, the girl I'd raised alone, the child I'd sacrificed for. "I need time to think," I said finally. That evening, I sat in my garden as dusk fell, the scent of roses heavy in the air. I thought about Jennifer as a child, her small hand in mine as we navigated life after her father left. I remembered bandaging her scraped knees, attending her school plays, celebrating her achievements. I'd given her everything I could, limited only by my financial means, never by my love. How had we arrived at this place where she saw me not as her mother, but as an asset to be liquidated in her time of need? A text message interrupted my thoughts. It was from Maria. "The board's decision letter arrived by courier after you left. It's on your desk. Do you want me to tell you what it says?" "No," I replied. "I'll come in now." The drive to the clinic was a blur. The manila envelope sat on my desk, innocent-looking yet life-altering. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. "After thorough investigation," the letter began, The state medical board finds no evidence of cognitive impairment or professional incompetence in the practice of Dr. Rebecca Anderson. All allegations are dismissed as unfounded, and Dr. Anderson's medical license is hereby renewed for the standard 5-year period. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by resolve. I had my license renewal. I had evidence of Jennifer and Daniel's financial troubles and probable motives. Now I needed to decide what kind of mother and what kind of person I wanted to be. I sat in my office chair, the license renewal letter still in my hands as a storm of emotions washed over me. Relief, vindication, and then a crushing wave of betrayal that made it difficult to breathe. My daughter, my firstborn child, had tried to have me declared incompetent for financial gain. The realization settled on my chest like a physical weight. The clinic was quiet at this hour, the reception area dark, examination rooms empty. I'd built this place from nothing while raising Jennifer and Matthew alone. Every paint color, every piece of equipment, every framed diploma on the wall represented a choice I'd made, a victory over circumstances. This clinic wasn't just my livelihood, it was my legacy. I reached for my phone to call Jennifer, then hesitated. What would I say? How do you confront your child about such a fundamental betrayal? I needed a clear head and a strategic approach. This wasn't a simple family disagreement. It was an orchestrated attempt to dismantle my life. Instead, I called Eleanor. The board renewed my license, I told her when she answered. All allegations dismissed as unfounded. That's wonderful news, Becky. I never doubted the outcome. Neither did I, but Vivian found evidence that Jennifer and Daniel are in serious financial trouble. The complaint to the board almost certainly came from them through a patient connection. They were trying to have me declared incompetent so they could control my assets. Eleanor was silent for a moment. I am deeply sorry, Becky. What will you do now? I don't know yet, but I need to protect myself and my practice. Come to dinner tomorrow, she offered. Vivian will be there too. 3 heads are better than 1. After we hung up, I locked the clinic and walked to my car, the evening air heavy with approaching rain. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Checking in, Mom. How are you feeling today? The casual cruelty of it, asking about my well-being while actively working to undermine me, sent a surge of anger through my body. I didn't respond. At home, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my porch swing, watching lightning flicker on. The horizon. The thunderstorm mirrored the tumult in my mind. All these years, I'd believed Jennifer's happiness was inextricably tied to my own, that her success was my success. Her pain, my pain. Now I had to confront the possibility that my daughter viewed me as an obstacle, or worse, merely a resource to be tapped when needed. I thought about all the times in recent months when Jennifer had questioned my memory, suggested I was working too hard, expressed concern about my ability to practice safely. Each comment, viewed through the lens of today's revelations, transformed from filial concern to calculated manipulation. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed in bed, replaying conversations and incidents, examining them for clues I should have noticed. By morning, exhaustion had hardened into resolve. I wouldn't confront Jennifer yet, not until I had protected myself from further attempts to undermine me. My first appointment was with my attorney, Catherine Sullivan, who had helped set up the trust years ago. I brought the file Vivian had compiled along with the medical board's decision letter. This is deeply troubling, Catherine said after reviewing the documents. From a legal standpoint, you need to revise your estate planning immediately. I want to remove Jennifer as beneficiary of the trust, I said. The words painful, but necessary. Catherine's expression was sympathetic but professional. That's certainly your right, but I'd suggest a more nuanced approach. We can modify the trust to include safeguards, perhaps a co-trustee who would prevent hasty liquidation. of assets or specific provisions about the continuation of the clinic? What about my medical directive and power of attorney? Jennifer is named in both. Those should definitely be changed, Catherine confirmed. You need someone you trust implicitly to make medical and financial decisions if you become incapacitated. Do you have someone in mind? Eleanor was the obvious choice, though at 68 she might not outlive me by much. Yes, but I'll need a backup as well. We spent the next hour revising documents. By the time I left Catherine's office, I had a new medical directive, power of attorney, and trust provisions that would protect the clinic from being sold without significant oversight. The changes wouldn't be official until formally executed and filed, which would take about a week. One more thing, Catherine said as I was leaving. Document everything. Every interaction with Jennifer, any unusual patient encounters, any discrepancies at the clinic. Start keeping a detailed journal. If there's another attempt to question your competence, contemporaneous notes will be invaluable. My next stop was the bank. I opened a new checking account at a different institution from where Jennifer and I had always banked, transferring enough funds for several months of expenses. I didn't think Jennifer had access to my accounts, but I couldn't be certain what measures she might have taken. After the bank, I went to the clinic. Maria looked up in surprise when I walked in. Dr. Anderson, I thought you were taking the morning off. Change of plans, I said, trying to sound casual. Maria, has Jennifer ever called you asking about my behavior at work? Or has she ever come to the clinic when I wasn't here? Maria's hesitation told me everything before she spoke. She calls occasionally to check on you, and she did stop by one afternoon when you were at the community health center. She said she was dropping off some papers for you to sign, but you hadn't mentioned anything. She looked troubled. Should I not have let her into your office? It's not your fault, Maria. But going forward, Jennifer doesn't come into my office without me present, and she doesn't get information about my schedule or my patients. If she asks, tell her to speak to me directly. Maria's eyes widened. Is everything okay, Dr. Anderson? I considered how much to share with my office manager of 18 years, who knew more about the daily operations of the clinic than anyone, except me. Not really, I admitted. Jennifer filed the complaint with the medical board. She's trying to have me declared incompetent so she can control my assets. Maria's face flushed with anger. That little... She stopped herself. Sorry, Dr. Anderson, but how could she do that to you after everything you've done for her? She and Daniel are in financial trouble, and they see the clinic property as their salvation. I sighed. I need your help, Maria. I need you to be extra vigilant about clinic operations, patient records, prescription pads, anything that could be used to suggest impropriety or incompetence. Of course, she agreed immediately. Should we install security cameras? We've talked about it before for general safety. It was a good suggestion. Yes, let's do that. And let's upgrade the computer security as well. Change all the passwords. The rest of the day, I saw patients as usual, though each interaction now carried a new weight. Was this patient genuinely seeking care, or were they another plant like Emma Taylor? I hated the suspicion that crept into my normally trusting doctor-patient relationships. By evening, I was emotionally drained but had taken concrete steps to protect myself. I drove to Eleanor's house for dinner, the weight of the day sitting heavily on my shoulders. Vivian arrived shortly after I did, bringing a bottle of wine and a folder of additional documents. More bad news? I asked wearily as she set the folder on Eleanor's dining table. Not news exactly, more context. Vivian opened the folder to reveal printouts of social media posts and news articles. Olivia's spending habits are, shall we say, conspicuous. She frequently posts about luxury purchases, vacations, home renovations. The disconnect between their apparent lifestyle and their financial reality is stark. I scanned the posts, Photos of Olivia in designer clothes beside Matt, standing beside a new luxury car, lounging by resort pools. Each image was a knife, twist, knowing that while they projected affluence, my daughter and son-in-law were desperate enough to try to seize control of my assets. How could I have raised someone capable of this? I asked, pushing the folder away. Where did I go wrong? Eleanor placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You didn't go wrong, Becky. You raised good children who became adults, who made bad choices. The financial pressure they're under, the lifestyle expectations, they can warp judgment. Eleanor's right, Vivian added. I've seen similar situations in my forensic work. Financial desperation can make otherwise decent people rationalize terrible actions, especially when they're trying to maintain appearances. So what now? I asked, accepting the glass of wine Eleanor offered. I've changed my legal documents, secured my finances, and implemented new security at the clinic. But I still don't know how to confront Jennifer. We discussed options over dinner. Vivian favored a direct approach, presenting Jennifer with the evidence and clear consequences. Eleanor suggested involving a family therapist to mediate the confrontation. Both had merit, but neither felt right to me. I need to understand more first, I said finally. I need to know if Jennifer truly believes I'm in cognitive decline, or if she's just using that as a convenient excuse. And I need to know if she's capable of recognizing the gravity of what she's done. How will you determine that? Vivian asked. I'm going to give her one last chance to be honest with me. The next day was Saturday, normally my day at the community health center. But I'd arranged coverage so I could instead invite Jennifer to breakfast at the Garden Cafe, a restaurant we'd frequented since she was a child. The familiar setting might make her more receptive, more reminiscent of simpler times between us. Jennifer arrived looking harried, her normally impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. Sorry I'm late, Mom. Client emergency. She kissed my cheek before sitting down, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. You're looking well. How are you feeling? I'm fine, Jennifer, but we need to talk about something important. I took a deep breath. The medical board completed their investigation. My license has been renewed without any restrictions or conditions. She paused, coffee cup halfway to her lips. That's great news, but they must have had concerns to investigate in the first place. The complaint was without merit. Someone made allegations about my competence that had no basis in fact. I held her gaze steadily. I'm trying to understand why someone would do that. Jennifer set down her cup, a flush creeping up her neck. People file complaints for all sorts of reasons, Mom. Disgruntled patients, competitors, or family members in financial distress looking to gain control of assets. I kept my voice low, mindful of other diners nearby. Jennifer, I know about the lawsuit, the second mortgage, the credit card judgments. I know you and Daniel are in trouble. Her face drained of color. How could you possibly... She stopped, composing herself. That's private information. You had no right to investigate us. Just as you had no right to try to have me declared incompetent. I pulled the manila envelope from my bag, sliding it across the table. The medical board sent me copies of all documents related to the complaint. The initial letter came from Robert Taylor 2 days after his daughter became my patient. You and Rob socialize regularly. The allegations precisely mirror concerns you've raised about my memory and judgment in recent months. Jennifer stared at the envelope, but didn't touch it. That's circumstantial at best. Perhaps. But tell me honestly, are you in financial trouble, Jennifer? She hesitated, then her shoulders slumped. It's bad, Mom, but I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean it to go? Did you think having your mother declared mentally unfit was a small thing? My voice cracked despite my efforts to remain calm. You don't understand. Daniel made some investment mistakes, big ones. Clients lost money. A lot of money. They're suing. If he can't settle, he'll lose his license. maybe face criminal charges. And she ran a hand through her hair, a gesture so reminiscent of her childhood that my heart ached despite my anger. I just needed access to capital. The clinic property is worth millions, and you're not getting any younger. So you decided to force my retirement by having my medical license revoked. Not revoked, just I thought a competency review might lead to a conversation about scaling back, transitioning to retirement. She couldn't meet my eyes. I didn't think they'd put you through a full investigation. You were willing to destroy my professional reputation, my identity, to solve your financial problems. The magnitude of her betrayal still stunned me. Instead of coming to me honestly and asking for help, would you have helped? Her tone turned bitter. You've always chosen the clinic over everything else. Over a nicer house, over vacations, over remarrying. Even now, you're spending what little free time you have at that charity clinic on the east side. The clinic wasn't a choice over you, Jennifer. It was a choice for you. Every sacrifice I made was to give you opportunities, to provide stability after your father left. I felt tears threatening and took a moment to compose myself. But that's not the point. The point is that you betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. Jennifer's defensiveness faltered. I was desperate, Mom. I am desperate. Daniel doesn't even know how bad things are. I've been moving money around, taking out loans, trying to keep up appearances. If I can't find a solution, I'll lose everything. My marriage, my home, my reputation. For a moment, I saw my daughter, as she truly was, not the polished marketing executive in designer clothes, but a frightened woman drowning in consequences of her own making. Despite everything, my maternal instinct to protect her surfaced. Why didn't you just talk to me? I would have helped however I could. You've always been so independent, so strong. You never needed anyone's help. I didn't want to be a burden. She swallowed hard, and I was ashamed. I screwed up, Mom. Badly. Shame doesn't justify what you tried to do to me. I know. She stared down at her untouched breakfast. What happens now? It was the question I'd been wrestling with since discovering her betrayal. What does a mother do when her child commits an unforgivable act? What consequences would be appropriate, necessary, healing? I've changed my medical directive and power of attorney. Eleanor Thompson is now my designated decision-maker if I become incapacitated. I've also modified my trust to prevent the clinic from being sold without significant oversight. Jennifer nodded, accepting these changes without protest. And us? What happens to us? That depends on you, on whether you genuinely understand the harm you tried to cause, and whether you're willing to make amends, not just to me, but to yourself. What does that mean? It means complete honesty from this point forward. It means getting proper financial and legal advice about your situation, not grasping at unethical solutions. It means rebuilding trust day by day with no guarantees. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was subdued. I don't deserve another chance. Probably not, I agreed. But you're still my daughter. And I believe redemption is possible for anyone truly seeking it. Even after what I did? Even after what you tried to do, I corrected. You didn't succeed, Jennifer. I'm still practicing medicine. The clinic is secure. Your plan failed. She winced at my bluntness. I'm sorry, Mom. More sorry than I can express. Sorry isn't enough. I need to see changed behavior, starting with how you handle your current crisis. I pulled a business card from my wallet and placed it beside her plate. This is Andrea Levine. She's a financial crimes attorney who specializes in securities cases. Call her on Monday. Tell her everything. She'll give you honest advice about your options. A lawyer will just tell me to prepare for the worst. Maybe the worst is what you need to face to start rebuilding. I gathered my purse, preparing to leave. One more thing, Jennifer. I want you to come volunteer at the Community Health Center next Saturday. She looked startled. I'm not a doctor. What would I do there? You'll see what I actually do with my time. You'll meet the people I serve, and maybe you'll understand. That value isn't always measured in dollars. I left Jennifer sitting at the table, staring at the attorney's card. Walking to my car, I felt lighter than I had in days, though the pain remained. I'd given Jennifer a path to redemption, but whether she would take it remained to be seen. That afternoon, I received a text from her. Made an appointment with Levine for Monday morning. We'll be at the clinic on Saturday. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The week that followed was surreal in its normality. I saw patients, managed the clinic, supervised the installation of new security cameras, and finalized the changes to my legal documents. Jennifer didn't call or visit, which was probably wise. We both needed time to process what had happened and what might come next. Saturday arrived with a clear sky and mild temperature, perfect for the community health fair the center was hosting. By the time Jennifer arrived, the parking lot was filled with tables offering blood pressure screenings, diabetes education, nutrition information, and children's dental checks. You're organizing all this? Jennifer asked, looking around at the bustling activity. Vivian Martinez is the primary organizer. I'm just one of many volunteers. I handed her a volunteer t-shirt. You'll be helping at the registration table. Eleanor will show you what to do. For the first hour, I watched from a distance as Jennifer awkwardly greeted people, filled out forms, and directed them to various stations. Her designer clothes and polished manner stood out among the predominantly working-class residents of the area, but she seemed to be making an effort to connect. During a brief lull, I approached her. How's it going? It's eye-opening, she admitted. I had no idea there was such a need for basic medical services in Oakridge. Most people don't. That's why we're here. I nodded toward an elderly woman making her way slowly toward the registration table. Mrs. Delgado needs her blood pressure checked. Would you escort her to that table over there? Jennifer offered her arm to the elderly woman, who smiled up at her as they walked slowly across the lot. I turned away to help a young mother with 3 children, but periodically I glimpsed Jennifer becoming more engaged, more present with the community members she was assisting. By mid-afternoon, the formal health fair activities were winding down, but a line still formed at the clinic door for walk-in consultations. I was examining a child with an ear infection when Maria texted me. Dr. Cooper from the medical board is here asking to speak with you. My heart raced. Had there been another complaint? I finished with my patient, prescribed antibiotics, and stepped out to find Dr. David Cooper waiting in the small break room. Dr. Anderson, he greeted me formally. I apologize for interrupting your volunteer work. Is there a problem with my license? I asked directly. Not at all. Quite the opposite. He smiled slightly. The board was impressed by your professionalism during our investigation and by the quality of care evident in your practice review. We're establishing a new mentorship program for physicians under investigation for minor infractions, and we'd like you to consider becoming a mentor. It was the last thing I'd expected. You want me to mentor doctors who are under investigation? Your experience could be invaluable to colleagues navigating the process. You maintained your practice, your composure, and your standards throughout a stressful investigation. Not everyone manages that balance so well. I was still processing this unexpected turn when Jennifer appeared in the doorway. Mom, there's a little boy out here with a pretty bad cut on his arm. The volunteer nurse thinks he needs stitches. Excuse me, Dr. Cooper. We can continue this conversation in a moment. I followed Jennifer to the examination room where a boy of about 8 sat holding his arm, tears streaming down his face. What happened, buddy? I asked, gently examining the laceration. I was climbing the fence and it caught on a sharp's part, he sniffled. Am I going to need a shot? We'll need to clean and close this cut, I explained. but we have special numbing gel, so the shot won't hurt much. I turned to Jennifer. I need an assistant. Wash your hands and put on gloves. To my surprise, Jennifer complied without hesitation. For the next 20 minutes, she handed me instruments, helped keep the boy distracted with silly jokes, and even held the wound closed while I sutured. When we finished, the boy gave us both high fives with his good arm and proudly showed off his bandage to his waiting mother. You have good hands, I told Jennifer as we cleaned up, steady under pressure. I guess I inherited something useful from you after all. Her attempted humor fell flat, but I appreciated the effort. You did well today, I said. Thank you for being here. Jennifer looked around the modest clinic with its outdated equipment and worn furniture. I understand better now why you won't sell this place. It's not just about the property or the practice. It's about the people. It always has been. Dr. Cooper was still waiting when we finished, and I introduced him to Jennifer. Your mother is an exceptional physician, he told her. The medical board was thoroughly impressed with her practice and her professionalism. Jennifer had the grace to look ashamed. Yes, she is exceptional in every way. After Dr. Cooper left with my tentative agreement to consider the mentorship role, Jennifer and I walked outside to find the health fair mostly cleaned up, volunteers packing the last tables into trucks. I met with Attorney Levine on Monday, Jennifer said abruptly. She thinks Daniel should self-report to the Securities Commission before the lawsuit forces an investigation. He'll probably lose his license, at least temporarily. There might be fines, maybe worse. That sounds like honest advice. It's terrifying advice. She shoved her hands in her pockets. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to face this head-on. What about Daniel? Does he know yet? Jennifer winced. I told him Thursday night. He didn't take it well. He's staying with his brother while he processes the implications, as he put it. I'm sorry, Jennifer. That must be painful. Not as painful as knowing I betrayed my mother, the one person who's always been there for me. She looked directly at me, her eyes red-rimmed. I keep thinking about what I almost did to you, how close I came to destroying your life to save mine. I don't know how to live with that knowledge. One day at a time, I said. That's how we live with our worst mistakes. We acknowledge them, make amends where possible, and try to be better going forward. Will you ever trust me again? It was the question that had haunted me all week. I don't know, I answered honestly. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, but I'm willing to give you the opportunity to try. We stood in silence for a moment, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. Around us, the neighborhood continued its Saturday rhythms. Children playing in nearby yards, older residents sitting on porches, the occasional car passing with music drifting from open windows. It struck me how rarely Jennifer had visited this part of Oakridge, how separate our worlds had become despite our connection. Why did you become a doctor, Mom? Jennifer asked suddenly. You never really told me. The question surprised me. I wanted to help people in a direct, tangible way, and I was good at science, good with my hands. It seemed like the natural how. But why pediatrics? You were at the top of your class. You could have chosen a more lucrative specialty. I thought about my early days in medical school, the various rotations through specialties, the moment I knew pediatrics was my calling. I wanted relationships with my patients, not just procedures. I wanted to know their families, to be part of their lives over years. That doesn't happen as much in other specialties. Jennifer nodded slowly. I think I understand that better now after today. Seeing how people look at you, how they trust you. It's something special. It was an acknowledgement that touched me deeply. For years, I'd sensed Jennifer's tacit disapproval of my modest practice, my decision to serve a community that included many low-income patients. She'd never understood why I didn't upgrade to a more prestigious setting, why I drove a 10-year-old car when specialists her friends' parents worked for made twice what I did. Thank you for saying that, I said softly. We walked toward our cars, the conversation shifting to practical matters. When she would meet with the Securities Commission, what legal consequences Daniel might face, how she would rebuild her life if their marriage ended. One thing at a time, I advised. Focus on being honest now. The rest will follow. As we reached my car, Jennifer hesitated, then asked quietly, "Would you come to dinner tomorrow?" "Not at the house. Daniel's taken most of the furniture anyway. Just somewhere simple. I'd like to talk more if you're willing." It was a small request, a tentative step toward whatever our relationship might become. Yes, I agreed. I'd like that. Driving home, I reflected on the day's unexpected developments: the medical board's request, Jennifer's participation at the clinic, her decision to confront the financial misconduct honestly. None of these changed the fact of her betrayal, but they suggested possibilities I hadn't considered when I first discovered what she'd done. The next morning, I woke early and walked in my garden, the dew-damp grass soaking my slippers. The roses needed pruning, the vegetable beds weeding. I'd neglected them in the chaos of recent weeks. Kneeling in the soil, pulling weeds and deadheading flowers, I felt a familiar peace settle over me. Gardens were forgiving, resilient. With proper care, even the most neglected plants could revive. Could the same be true of a damaged relationship between mother and daughter? The Sunday dinner with Jennifer took place at a small Italian restaurant downtown, a neutral territory where we had occasionally celebrated milestones in the past. I arrived early, selecting a corner booth for privacy. The restaurant was quiet with only a few other tables occupied, soft music playing in the background. When Jennifer walked in, I was struck by how different she looked from the successful marketing executive who had lectured me about retirement just weeks earlier. Her shoulders were slumped, the confidence drained from her posture. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Thanks for coming, Mom," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I wasn't sure you would." I said I would. I kept my tone even, my face composed. Years of delivering difficult diagnoses had taught me to control my expressions. The server came for our drink orders. Jennifer hesitated, then asked for water. "I'm avoiding alcohol right now," she explained, trying to keep a clear head through all this. It was a small thing, but it registered as a positive sign. A woman drowning in problems often reaches for substances that numb the pain. Jennifer was choosing clarity instead. "I spoke with Attorney Levine again this morning," she said after the server left. "The self-reporting process to the Securities Commission starts tomorrow. She thinks there's a chance, a small one, that Daniel could keep a restricted license if he makes full restitution." "And can he make full restitution?" Jennifer stared down at the table. "Not without selling?" "Everything. The penthouse, the cars, cashing out what's left of our retirement accounts. Even then, it might not be enough." "What about your marriage? Is Daniel willing to make those sacrifices with you?" Her bitter laugh told me everything. "Daniel made it clear he didn't sign up for this. His family has connections at several investment firms. He thought he was protecting his career by marrying into a respectable medical family, not dragging himself into a scandal." I wasn't surprised. I'd never quite warmed to my son-in-law, though I'd tried for Jennifer's sake. There had always been something calculating in his manner, a sense that his affection was conditional upon Jennifer maintaining a certain lifestyle. "I'm sorry, Jennifer. Divorce on top of everything else would be a heavy burden." It's hard to tell which would be worse, staying in a marriage that's become transactional or facing all this alone. She looked up at me, her eyes weary. "I'm sorry to dump this on you after everything I've done. I just don't have anyone else to talk to right now." The server returned with our drinks and took our dinner orders. I waited until she left before responding. "I'm still your mother, Jennifer. That hasn't changed despite recent events. But everything else has, hasn't it? She fidgeted with her napkin. I've been thinking about what you said about understanding why the clinic matters. So much to you. I never really got it before yesterday. And now? Now I see it's something you built, something that matters to people who need it. I never understood why you chose to practice in that neighborhood instead of somewhere more affluent, somewhere you could have charged higher rates, lived more comfortably. She paused. But yesterday, watching you with that little boy, seeing how you talked to people, how they responded to you, I started to understand. It was a moment of awareness I'd long wished for, Jennifer recognizing the value in my choices beyond monetary measures. That it came now, in the midst of her disgrace and my betrayal, carried a painful irony. The clinic is my life's work, I said simply. Not just the building, but what happens inside it. The relationships, the trust, the ability to help people navigate their health over decades. That's what I couldn't bear to lose. And I tried to take it from you. The self-recrimination in her voice was raw. I've spent days trying to understand how I could have convinced myself that was acceptable, how I justified it. How did you? I was genuinely curious about her rationalization process. Jennifer took a long drink of water before answering. It started small, just concerns about you working too hard, getting older. Then, when the financial pressure started building, those concerns evolved. She grimaced. I told myself you were approaching retirement age anyway, that the stress of running the clinic alone wasn't good for you, that you deserved rest. But those were just excuses. The truth is, I was desperate and selfish. Our food arrived, but neither of us had much appetite. We picked at our meals in silence for a few minutes, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging between us. Years of misunderstandings and divergent values now exposed in the harsh light of crisis. What happens after tomorrow? I asked finally. After you self-report. Best case, I negotiate a settlement agreement with the Securities Commission, pay fines, accept career limitations, and eventually rebuild with severe restrictions. Worst case, criminal charges, possible jail time. Her fork clattered against her plate as her hand trembled slightly. It's terrifying, Mom. I've built my entire identity around financial success. I don't know who I am without it. The vulnerability in her admission touched something deep in me. How often had I wondered the same about myself? Who would I be if I couldn't practice medicine? What remained of Dr. Rebecca Anderson if you removed the doctor? We are more than our professions, Jennifer. More than our successes or failures. I reached across the table and briefly touched her hand. You'll discover that now, though not in the way you would have chosen. How do you know? Because that's what happens in times of crisis. We're stripped down to our essential selves. What remains is who we truly are. She considered this, pushing pasta around her plate. I don't like who I am right now. Then this is your opportunity to become someone different, someone better. The rest of dinner passed with talk of practical matters, what Jennifer would say to the Securities Commission, how she would manage financially during the coming months, whether she would contest Daniel's divorce filing or negotiate an amicable separation. It wasn't warm mother-daughter conversation, but it was honest, and that felt like a fragile beginning. As we waited for the check, Jennifer hesitated, then asked, "Would you be willing to come with me to the Securities Commission tomorrow?" Not inside. I need to do that alone. But maybe just wait outside. I know I don't deserve your support, but it would help knowing you're there. The request surprised me. It was humble, vulnerable, qualities I'd rarely seen in the polished, confident woman my daughter had become. It reminded me of the 8-year-old Jennifer asking me to wait outside her classroom on the first day at a new school after her father left. "Yes," I said. "I'll be there." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you." She insisted on paying the bill, though I knew her finances were precarious. It was a small gesture of responsibility I chose not to challenge. Outside the restaurant, the spring evening was mild, stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. We stood awkwardly by our cars, the conversation winding down to its natural conclusion. "One more thing," Jennifer said as I turned to leave. "I want you to know I'm going to make this right somehow. Not just with the Securities Commission, but with you. I don't know how yet, but I will. Start by being honest with yourself, with the authorities, with me. That's foundation enough for now." As I drove home, I reflected on the evening. Jennifer's remorse seemed genuine, her understanding of the magnitude of her actions clear. But trust, once shattered, couldn't be restored through a single contrite conversation. The path ahead would be long and uncertain for both of us. Monday morning dawned clear and warm. I had rearranged my clinic schedule to accompany Jennifer to the Securities Commission offices downtown. We agreed to meet in the lobby of the government building at 9 p.m. I arrived early, watching people stream in and out, government workers, lawyers, citizens attending to bureaucratic necessities. How strange that among them, my daughter would shortly be confessing to financial misconduct that could end her career. Jennifer arrived precisely at 9, dressed in a conservative suit, carrying a leather portfolio. Her face was pale but composed, her handshake with me formal, as though we were mere acquaintances. "Attorney Levine is meeting me upstairs," she said, voice strained. "She says the initial meeting will probably last about 2 hours. I'll be here," I promised. "There's a cafe across the street. I'll wait there and keep my phone on." Jennifer nodded, swallowing hard. "Mom, whatever happens in there, thank you for being here today. You're still my daughter, Jennifer. That doesn't change." I watched her walk through security and disappear into an elevator before crossing to the cafe. I ordered tea and opened the novel I'd brought, but the words swam before my eyes, impossible to focus on. Instead, I found myself thinking about the years after Richard left, when it was just Jennifer, Matthew, and me against the world. I remembered nights studying medical journals after the children were asleep, determined to stay current in my field despite the demands of single parenthood. I remembered Jennifer's science projects spread across our tiny kitchen table, the pride in her eyes when her model of the respiratory system won first place. I remembered teaching her to drive. In an empty parking lot, both of us laughing as she struggled with the clutch of my old manual transmission car. Somewhere along the way, that close-knit team of 3 had fractured. Jennifer had adopted values I didn't share, equating worth with wealth, status with happiness. I had remained focused on my patients, my community service, finding fulfillment. In work, Jennifer clearly viewed as beneath her aspirations. The distance had grown so gradually I'd barely noticed, until suddenly my daughter was a stranger capable of betraying me for financial gain. 2 hours stretched to 3, then 4. I ordered lunch, answered emails on my phone, and tried not to imagine worst-case scenarios unfolding upstairs. Just after 2, my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Coming down now," I hurried. Back to the government building, reaching the lobby just as Jennifer emerged from the elevator. Her face was drawn, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion, but there was also a hint of relief in her expression. "How did it go?" I asked when she reached me. "About as well as could be expected. They're launching a formal investigation, of course, but Levine thinks my voluntary disclosure will count significantly in my favor. I've agreed to surrender my professional certifications temporarily during the investigation, and to forfeit any compensation derived from the affected accounts." She ran a hand through her hair, a gesture of fatigue. "That's the hardest part. I've agreed to liquidate personal assets to begin restitution, but it won't cover everything immediately. There will be a payment plan, probably spanning years. But no criminal charges filed yet, which Levine says is promising." We walked outside, the bright afternoon sunlight harsh after the dimness of the lobby. Jennifer squinted upward as though seeing the sky for the first time. What happens now? I asked. I start dismantling the life I built. Sell the penthouse, the cars, anything of value. Find a job that doesn't require my marketing certifications. Figure out who I am when I'm not Jennifer Mitchell, marketing executive. She gave a humorless laugh. Maybe I'll finally learn a practical skill like cooking or gardening, something honest. The self-pity in her tone grated, but I recognized it as part of the process. Jennifer was grieving the loss of her identity, her status, her marriage. That grief would need to run its course before true change could begin. One step at a time, I advised. You've taken the first and hardest one today. I doubt that, she said grimly. The hardest is yet to come, when friends and colleagues find out, when my clients learn what happened to their campaigns. She checked her watch. I should go. I need to clear out my office by 5. The firm doesn't want me there when staff arrives tomorrow. Do you want help? She looked surprised by the offer. You'd do that? After everything? Yes. And so that afternoon, I found myself in the gleaming offices of Sterling Marketing Group, helping my daughter pack her professional life into cardboard boxes. The space spoke of success and affluence, expensive furniture, original artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the river. Jennifer's corner office was particularly impressive, with awards and credentials displayed prominently on the walls. As we worked, a few colleagues stopped by, conversations awkward and brief. Most avoided the office entirely, though I noticed curious glances through the glass walls. News traveled fast in professional circles. Everyone likely knew something was happening, even if details remained confidential. Vultures are already circling, Jennifer muttered as a particularly ambitious-looking young woman peered in for the 3rd time. Ashley's probably already calculating how to absorb my client list. Focus on what you're doing, not on what others think, I advised, carefully wrapping a Crystal Award in newspaper. Their opinions can't define you unless you let them. Easy to say when you haven't built your life around others' perceptions, she sighed, staring at the wall of credentials she was now taking down. I wanted to make you proud, she said suddenly. To show you I could be successful, important, more than just the child of a small-town doctor. The admission caught me off guard. Jennifer, I've always been proud of you. From your first steps to your college graduation, your career choice never changed that. But you never understood it either. You never valued what I did the way you valued your own work. There was truth in her accusation. I'd respected Jennifer's intelligence and work ethic, but I'd never fully appreciated her field. In my mind, marketing had always seemed abstract, disconnected from the tangible human needs I addressed daily. Perhaps I didn't, I acknowledged, but that was my limitation, not a judgment of your worth. We finished packing in silence, each lost in private thoughts. The office that had once displayed Jennifer's success now stood empty, bare walls and vacant desk, a stark visual representation of her fall. As we carried the last boxes to her car, Jennifer said, I listed the penthouse today. The realtor thinks it will sell quickly, even at a slight discount for a fast closing. Daniel's already moved most of his things out. Where will you go? She shrugged. I found a month-to-month rental, a small apartment near downtown. It's nothing special, but it's all I can afford right now. I hesitated, then offered, You could stay with me if you need to. The guest room is always available. Jennifer looked at me, surprise evident. You'd let me stay in your home? Even now? You're still my daughter, I said simply. And everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. She shook her head. I appreciate the offer, but I think I need to do this on my own. Hit bottom, face consequences, all that therapeutic jargon. She managed a weak smile. Besides, we probably need some space from each other while we figure out whatever comes next. She was right, though part of me, the mother who had bandaged, skinned knees and soothed childhood nightmares, wanted to shelter her from the storm she'd created. But Jennifer wasn't a child anymore, and these weren't skinned knees. Her healing would require independence, not protection. "The offer stands if things change," I said. "Now, do you have groceries at this new apartment?" "Mom, I'm 35, not 14. I can handle grocery shopping." "Humor me. It's what mothers do when we don't know what else to do." So we stopped at a supermarket on the way to her new apartment, filling a cart with basics. It was a strangely normal activity amidst the chaos of the day, selecting produce, debating bread brands, adding a few comfort foods to the otherwise practical list. For a brief time, we were just mother and daughter doing ordinary things, the weight of betrayal and disgrace temporarily set aside. The apartment was indeed small and sparsely furnished, a far cry from the luxurious penthouse she'd shared with Daniel. It occupied the second floor of an older house with sloped ceilings and creaky wooden floors. Jennifer set down the grocery bags on a chipped laminate counter and looked around with a grimace. "It's temporary," she said, as though reassuring herself. "Just until I get back on my feet." I nodded, helping her unpack groceries into the dated cabinets. "It's clean and safe. That's what matters right now." "I suppose so." She leaned against the counter, fatigue evident in every line of her body. "It's strange. 24 hours ago, I was terrified of facing the Securities Commission, of admitting what I'd done. Now that it's over, I just feel empty. That's normal after any major ordeal. The adrenaline fades and leaves exhaustion behind. Does it get better? This feeling like I've ruined everything beyond repair?" I thought carefully before answering. "Yes, but not quickly, and not in a straight line. There will be days when moving forward seems impossible and days when hope returns. The key is to keep going, one foot in front of the other, even on the worst days." Jennifer nodded slowly. "Thank you for today, for waiting, for helping with the office, for..." She gestured at the groceries. "This, all of it. That's what family does, Jennifer, even when things are complicated." I left shortly after, driving home through the Chasdi quiet streets of early evening. Exhaustion settled over me as the day's tension ebbed. I had supported my daughter through this critical moment, maintained my boundaries, offered appropriate help without enabling. It felt like navigating a treacherous mountain path. One misstep could send us tumbling backward, but the correct route remained unclear. The next morning at the clinic, Maria updated me on the security changes we'd implemented. New cameras, upgraded computer passwords, restricted access to medical records and prescription pads. "No one gets into sensitive areas without proper authorization now," she assured me, "and all visitors are logged. Thank you for handling this so efficiently. It's the least I could do." She hesitated, then asked, "Have you spoken with Jennifer?" I nodded, giving her a brief, edited account of Jennifer's meeting with the Securities Commission and the surrender of her professional certifications. Maria had always had a soft spot for Jennifer, having watched her grow up around the clinic. "That poor kid," she said, then quickly corrected herself. Not that what she did was excusable. It wasn't. But losing everything at her age, that's a hard fall. "It is," I agreed. "But sometimes we need to hit bottom before we can rebuild properly." The day proceeded with its usual rhythm of patient appointments, paperwork, phone calls, and follow-ups. The familiar routine was comforting after the emotional turbulence of recent days. Here in the clinic, I knew exactly who I was and what was expected of me. My competence wasn't in question. My judgment was trusted. The contrast with Jennifer's situation, stripped of professional identity, facing an uncertain future, couldn't have been starker. Late that afternoon, as I was finishing patient notes, Dr. David Cooper called. "Dr. Anderson, I wanted to follow up on our conversation at the Community Health Center. Have you had a chance to consider the mentorship program?" The medical board's request had been overshadowed by Jennifer's crisis. "I've been thinking about it," I said cautiously. "Could you tell me more about what would be involved?" Of course. The program pairs experienced physicians with colleagues under investigation for minor infractions, documentation errors, communication, issues, boundary questions, nothing involving actual patient harm or serious misconduct. He paused. Many good doctors find themselves before the board for fixable problems, often stemming from burnout or personal stress. A mentor who's navigated the process successfully can make a significant difference in outcomes. The concept appealed to me. Throughout my career, I'd informally mentored younger physicians, enjoying the opportunity to share hard-won wisdom and perspective. This would be more structured with specific objectives, but the core idea was similar. I'd like to participate, I decided. When would it start? We're launching the program next month. There would be a brief training session, then matching, with your first mentee. The time commitment is flexible, generally a few hours a month, primarily via phone or video conference. That sounds manageable with my schedule? Excellent. I'll email the details. Dr. Cooper hesitated, then added, "If I may speak personally for a moment, Dr. Anderson, your grace under pressure during the investigation was remarkable. That quality is exactly what struggling physicians need in a mentor." After the call ended, I sat in my office turning over Dr. Cooper's words, grace under pressure. Had I really shown that? The investigation had been among the most stressful experiences of my professional life, threatening everything I'd built. Yet I'd continued seeing patients, maintained my volunteer work, cooperated fully with the board's requirements. Perhaps there was a certain grace in simply carrying on when the ground beneath you threatens to give way. That evening at home, I was preparing dinner when my phone rang. It was Matthew. "Mom, I just heard about Jennifer from Daniel. Is it true? About the Securities Commission investigation and everything?" I'd been wondering when Matthew would surface. He and Jennifer weren't particularly close as adults, but Daniel would naturally have reached out to him in the aftermath of their separation. "Yes, it's true. Jennifer and Daniel are in serious financial trouble. She's cooperating with the investigation." Daniel made it sound like she lost her mind, turning herself in when they could have fought the allegations. Matthew's voice held a note of confusion. He said she's throwing away everything they built. She's taking responsibility for unethical actions before they became potentially criminal ones. I kept my voice neutral, unsure how much Matthew knew about Jennifer's attempt to have me declared incompetent. But why now? They could have found a way out. Daniel says his family had connections who could have helped. Perhaps Jennifer wanted to solve her problems honestly instead of through more deception. I paused, then asked directly, "Matthew, did you know about Jennifer's complaint to the medical board about her trying to have me declared mentally unfit?" Silence on the line. Then, "She what?" His shock seemed genuine. Jennifer filed an anonymous complaint questioning my competence. The board investigated and found it baseless. She admitted to me that she and Daniel were trying to gain control of the clinic property to solve their financial problems. Jesus. Mom? Matthew sounded stunned. "I knew she was worried about you working too hard, but this? No. I had no idea she'd go that far." "You're sure? You didn't help her build a case against me?" "Absolutely not." His indignation came through clearly. "I mean, yeah, when she called about the prescription pad thing, I was concerned. But filing a complaint? Trying to take over your assets? That's insane." I believed him. Matthew had always been the more straightforward of my children, less ambitious than Jennifer, more content with his modest tech career. He had never shown much interest in my finances or the clinic as a potential asset. "I'm sorry you're finding out this way," I said. "It's been a difficult few weeks. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I can fly home." "I'm fine, Matthew. The board investigation is over. My license is renewed. I've taken steps to protect myself legally going forward." And Jennifer? What happens to her? That's up to her. She started making amends, being honest about what happened. It's a beginning. Matthew was quiet for a moment. I should have been there. I should have seen what was happening. You live across the country, Matthew. This isn't your responsibility. Still, you're my mother. Jennifer's my sister. I should have stayed more connected. He sighed. I'm coming home next weekend, just for a few days. I need to see you. Both try to understand what happened. After we hung up, I sat with my cooling dinner, contemplating this new development. Matthew's return would add another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation. But perhaps his perspective, less enmeshed in Oakridge's social dynamics, less driven by financial pressures, might prove valuable. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I had reclaimed my professional standing, protected my assets, and begun the difficult process of redefining my relationship with Jennifer. Matthew's impending visit might further clarify family dynamics that had long remained unexamined. Tomorrow would bring a full clinic. Schedule: a meeting with the contractors installing our new security system and preliminary reading for the mentorship program. Life was moving forward, altered but intact. There would be difficult conversations ahead, trust to rebuild, boundaries to maintain. But tonight, in the quiet of my bedroom, I felt a cautious optimism taking root. My daughter had betrayed me, in a fundamental way, yet had also shown the courage to face the consequences of her actions. My son was reconnecting with his family responsibilities. My practice was secure, and I had discovered in myself a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The ability to withstand a profound betrayal without losing my essential self. Whatever came next, I would face it with the same quiet strength that had sustained me through decades of single parenthood, building a medical practice, and now navigating the painful terrain of familial betrayal. This wasn't an ending, but rather another challenging beginning in a life that had seen many such turns. Autumn transformed Oakridge with breathtaking colors, the trees along my street turning vibrant shades of crimson and gold. One crisp October morning, I sat in my office reviewing patient charts before hours when Maria knocked on my door. "Dr. Anderson, there's a package for you." She placed a carefully wrapped box on my desk. "The courier said it needs your personal signature." Curious, I signed for the delivery and unwrapped it to find an elegantly bound leather portfolio. Inside was my renewed medical license, professionally framed, alongside a handwritten letter from the State Medical Board. "We are pleased to recognize Dr. Rebecca Anderson for her exceptional contribution to the Physician Mentorship Program. Her guidance has helped restore 4 colleagues to full professional standing and demonstrated the highest ideals of our profession." Below the formal recognition was a personal note from Dr. Cooper. "Rebecca, what began as an unfounded investigation has transformed into a vital resource for physicians in crisis. Your ability to turn adversity into opportunity embodies the resilience we hope all medical professionals can achieve." I ran my fingers over the framed license, emotion welling unexpectedly. This simple document represented everything I'd fought to preserve: my professional identity, my autonomy, my ability to continue the work that gave my life meaning. That it now symbolized not just personal victory, but broader contribution felt like the closing of a perfect circle. Maria peered over my shoulder. "That's beautiful, Dr. Anderson. You deserve the recognition." "Thank you, Maria." I placed the frame on my desk where patients could see it. "Please hold my calls for 15 minutes. I need to make a personal call." Alone in my office, I dialed Eleanor, who answered on the second ring. "Did you have something to do with this board recognition?" I asked without preamble. Eleanor chuckled. "I may have mentioned to David Cooper how effectively you've been mentoring struggling physicians, but the recognition is entirely earned. Becky, you've helped transform the board's approach from purely punitive to genuinely rehabilitative. It means more than I expected, I admitted, especially given how this all started. That's often how the most meaningful contributions begin, not from careful planning, but from personal challenge. You understood what those physicians were experiencing because you'd been through it yourself, albeit under different circumstances. We chatted a few more minutes before Eleanor asked, "Have you told Jennifer about the recognition?" "Not yet. I just received it this morning." "You should. She'd want to know." I promised to call Jennifer later and hung up, reflecting on Eleanor's suggestion. A year ago, sharing professional accomplishments with Jennifer had been fraught with tension, her responses tinged with condescension about my little clinic and its modest scale. Now, paradoxically, she might better appreciate this recognition than anyone else. My morning appointments kept me busy until noon, when I took a brief lunch break and called Jennifer at her new workplace. 6 months after her self-reporting to the Securities Commission, she had found a position as an administrative coordinator at a local nonprofit focused on financial literacy for underserved communities, a far cry from her executive marketing role, but one that seemed to suit her evolving perspective. "Mom, hi." Her voice held genuine warmth. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. I received formal recognition from the medical board today for the mentorship program." "That's fantastic." Her enthusiasm sounded sincere. "You've put so much into helping those doctors. They're lucky to have you." "Thank you, Jennifer." I hesitated, then added, "I thought you might understand the significance, given everything that happened." "I do." Her voice grew more serious. "The irony isn't lost on me. If I hadn't triggered that investigation, you might never have become involved with the mentorship program. Life takes unexpected turns." "That it does." "Would you like to celebrate? Dinner this weekend? My treat." She laughed lightly. "Within my current budget limitations, of course, but I found a place that serves decent food at reasonable prices." I smiled at her self-deprecating humor. "I'd like that very much." After hanging up, I returned to patient appointments, the afternoon passing quickly. My last patient was Mrs. Delgado, a spirited octogenarian I'd treated for 2 decades. After addressing her blood pressure concerns, she nodded toward my newly framed license. "That's new," she observed. "Special occasion?" I explained briefly about the recognition, and her eyes brightened. "I read about that program in the medical newsletter my grandson leaves when he visits, helping doctors who've made mistakes get back on track instead of just punishing them." She nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what medicine needs. More compassion, less judgment." "That's a perfect summary, Mrs. Delgado. You know, when my Carlos was still with us, he made some terrible mistakes. Financial ones, mostly." Her weathered hand smoothed her skirt. "Everyone told me to leave him, that he'd never change. But I saw the man beneath the mistakes, and I stayed. Hardest thing I ever did, but also the right thing. He turned himself around completely in those last 10 years. Her story touched me deeply. That took tremendous courage and faith on your part." "Not faith exactly. Clear-eyed seeing. Recognizing that people can change when given the right support and the right consequences." She gathered her purse, preparing to leave. "I see you're doing that same work now, just in a different context." Mrs. Delgado's perspective stayed with me through the evening as I prepared for my weekly dinner with Eleanor. These days, our friendship had deepened beyond professional camaraderie into something approaching family. We took turns hosting dinner, sharing books, discussing everything from medical research to gardening techniques. Eleanor noticed my thoughtful mood as we sat on her porch after the meal. "You're contemplating something important." I recognize that expression. I shared Mrs. Delgado's story and my reflection on the parallels between the mentorship program and my evolving relationship with Jennifer. She's quite insightful, your patient, Eleanor said. There is a similar core principle, believing in potential for change while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Do you think I've found the right balance with Jennifer? I asked, voicing a question that frequently troubled me. Sometimes I worry I've been too forgiving, other times not. Forgiving enough. Eleanor considered this carefully. I think you've been remarkably clear-sighted, Becky. You've distinguished between forgiveness and trust, between compassion and enabling. Those aren't easy distinctions to maintain, especially with one's child. The weekend dinner with Jennifer took place at a charming riverside cafe featuring local ingredients and modest prices. Jennifer had reserved a table on the outdoor patio where autumn foliage provided a stunning backdrop. "Congratulations again," she said, raising her water glass in a toast. "Official recognition of what your patients and colleagues have always known, that you're an exceptional physician and mentor." "Thank you." I studied my daughter's face in the golden evening light. The past 6 months had etched new lines around her eyes, but also brought a depth and humility I'd never seen before. "How are things at the Literacy Foundation?" I asked. "Good, challenging, in ways I never expected." Her expression grew animated as she described a workshop she'd developed. Most of our clients are just one financial emergency away from disaster. Teaching them basic skills like budgeting and understanding predatory lending practices makes a real difference in their lives. That's meaningful work, Jennifer. It's fulfilling in a way marketing luxury brands never was. She set down her glass. The Securities Commission reviewed Daniel's case last week. They're maintaining their sanctions, but he's found a position at his father's firm, heavily supervised, of course. "And your divorce?" "Final next month." Her voice held resignation rather than bitterness. "It's for the best. We built our relationship on appearances and ambitions, not values or genuine connection. It took losing everything to see that clearly." As our food arrived, Jennifer's expression grew more serious. "Matthew called yesterday. He's planning another visit next month." Matthew's initial visit following Jennifer's confession had been tense, but ultimately productive. He'd been shocked by Jennifer's actions, but seemed determined to understand rather than simply judge. Since then, he'd been calling more regularly and had visited twice, a marked change from his previous pattern of sporadic contact. "He's been checking in with me weekly," I said. "I think seeing what happened with you shook him, made him reevaluate his priorities." He said something similar to me, about realizing family matters more than he thought. Jennifer smiled wryly. "Nothing like watching your sister implode to inspire family reconnection. At least some good has come from the situation." Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately, how something that began so terribly has led to unexpected positive changes. I'm doing work that matters. Matthew's reconnecting with us. You're helping other doctors through the mentorship program." She met my eyes directly. "And I'd like to think I'm becoming someone better than I was before." "I believe you are," I said, and meant it. "I've been meeting with a therapist," she admitted. "Trying to understand the choices I made, the values, that led me astray. It's painful work, looking at yourself honestly. The most important work often is." She asked me an interesting question last session. If I could go back and change what I did, would I? Jennifer twirled her fork absently. My immediate reaction was, of course. Who wouldn't undo such a terrible mistake? But then I thought more deeply, and I'm not so sure. Why not? Because I might never have confronted the emptiness at the core of the life I'd built. I might have continued chasing status and money, measuring my worth by my possessions, treating people as means to an end. She shook her head. I'm not saying I'm glad I betrayed you. That remains unforgivable. But the collapse of that life forced me to build something more authentic. Her self-awareness impressed me. How different from the daughter who once dismissed my clinic as quaint and suggested I wasn't ambitious enough. That's profound insight, Jennifer. Not everyone finds meaning in their failures. I had a good example. She smiled slightly. I watched you rebuild after Dad left, creating something meaningful from difficulty. I just took the much harder road to learning that lesson. As we finished our meal, Jennifer hesitated before saying, "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you. I've been developing a financial literacy program specifically for medical practices, helping independent physicians understand the business side of medicine without compromising their values." That sounds valuable. I've been consulting with some of the doctors at the community health center, but I'd love your perspective. Would you be willing to review the curriculum? Give me feedback? The request surprised me, not because Jennifer was asking for help, but because she was inviting me into her new professional world, valuing my input in a way she never had before. Of course, I'd be happy to. Relief crossed her face. Thank you. It matters to me that it's done right, that it genuinely helps physicians maintain their independence while serving their communities. As we walked to our cars after dinner, the evening air crisp with autumn chill, Jennifer suddenly asked, "Do you remember when I was 10 and wanted to quit piano lessons?" The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. "Yes, you were frustrated because you couldn't master a particular piece." "Mozart's Sonata in C major," she nodded. "I declared I had no talent and wanted to quit. You didn't let me. I believed you were capable of more than you thought you were. You made me practice every day for 2 weeks before you'd even discuss quitting. By then, I'd mastered the piece and didn't want to quit anymore." She paused beside her modest used car, a far cry from the luxury vehicle she'd once driven. "You saw potential in me that I couldn't see in myself." "I still do, Jennifer." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the streetlights. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom, even when I gave you every reason to." That's what mothers do. At least the lucky ones who get to see their children find their way, even after difficult detours. Driving home, I reflected on the evening. Jennifer's path to redemption was still unfolding, the trust between us still fragile. But the direction was undeniable. The daughter who had once seen me as an obstacle or resource had become someone capable of genuine insight and humility. The following week brought unexpected news. Dr. Cooper called to discuss the mentorship program and mentioned casually, "By the way, we received an unusual request. Dr. Thomas Jenkins, the specialist who confirmed your diagnosis of Emma Taylor during your investigation, is interested in establishing a pediatric clinic in an underserved area of Oakridge. He asked, specifically if you might consider a consulting role." "Thomas Jenkins?" The name was vaguely familiar. "Pediatric gastroenterologist. He mentioned meeting you during your board investigation." I remembered now. Dr. Jenkins had contacted Maria to confirm my diagnosis of Emma Taylor's celiac disease during the investigation. I'd never met him personally. Why would he ask for me? I wondered aloud. Apparently, he was impressed by your patient care model. Said your charts were the most thorough and patient-centered he'd seen in years. He's looking to create something similar in the eastern part of Oakridge. After the call, I sat in my office, turning over this development. Eastern Oakridge desperately needed pediatric services. The families there currently traveled nearly an hour to reach basic health care. A clinic there would be transformative for the community. That evening, I called Matthew to share the news about Dr. Jenkins' proposal. "That's fantastic, Mom." His enthusiasm came clearly through the phone. "Are you going to do it?" "I'm considering it. The area certainly needs pediatric care, and mentoring a new practice would be interesting." "You should definitely do it. You've always said Eastern Oakridge was a healthcare desert." We chatted about his upcoming visit and recent promotion before Matthew said, "I talked to Jennifer yesterday. She mentioned her financial literacy program for doctors. Sounds like she's found her calling. I think she has. It combines her business background with more meaningful work. It's weird, Matthew reflected. 6 months ago, I was furious with her for what she tried to do to you. Now I'm actually proud of how she's rebuilding her life. People can change profoundly when they're forced to confront their worst actions. Still, not everyone would make something constructive from it. That takes a certain kind of strength. He paused. She got that from you, you know. After we hung up, I sat on my porch swing, watching the last light fade from the sky. The maple tree in my front yard stood brilliantly red against the darkening blue, its leaves occasionally drifting down in the gentle breeze. Change was in the air, not just in the season, but in my family and professional life. The next morning, I called Dr. Jenkins and agreed to meet about his proposed clinic. I also emailed Jennifer, confirming that I would review her financial literacy program. Then I contacted Eleanor to discuss joining the board of directors for the scholarship foundation we'd established for medical students from disadvantaged backgrounds. 3 days later, Dr. Jenkins and I toured potential sites in eastern Oakridge. He was younger than I'd expected, early 40s, with an earnest manner and clear vision for community-based pediatric care. "Your practice model is exactly what I hope to create," he told me as we walked through an empty storefront that had potential as a clinic. "Personalized care, deep community connections, accessibility for all income levels. The business consultants. I've spoken with say it's not financially viable, but I've seen your clinic thrive for decades." "It's challenging," I acknowledged. "You won't get rich, but you can make a good living while providing essential care. That's all I'm looking for. After years in hospital practice, I want to build something more meaningful, more connected." He hesitated. "I know this is presumptuous, but would you consider a more formal advisory role? Perhaps joining as a consulting physician one day, week when we open?" The offer was unexpected but intriguing. I'd never considered practicing outside my own clinic, but the idea of helping establish pediatric services in an underserved area held strong appeal. "Let me think about it," I said. "There's potential here, but I'd need to understand the full commitment." That weekend, Matthew arrived for his visit, bringing with him ideas for upgrading the clinic's outdated computer systems. His tech background made him the perfect person to evaluate our needs, and I welcomed his enthusiasm for contributing his expertise. On Sunday, Jennifer joined us for dinner at my house, the first time both my children had been together in my home in nearly 2 years. As I prepared the meal, I could hear them in the living room, their conversation moving from awkward small talk to more substantive discussion. By the time we sat down to eat, a tentative warmth had developed between them. Over dessert, I shared Dr. Jenkins's proposal for the Eastern Oakridge Clinic and his invitation for me to join as a consulting physician. "You should do it," Jennifer said immediately. "It's exactly the kind of project you'd excel at." "Agreed," Matthew added. "Plus, it's a great way to extend your impact without taking on a full second practice." "I'm leaning toward accepting," I admitted, though I'd need to rearrange my schedule at the main clinic. "Maria could handle more administrative duties," Jennifer suggested. "She's practically running the place already when you're at the community health center." "And I could set up a secure telemedicine system," Matthew offered, "so you could consult with patients remotely when needed." I looked at my children, now offering constructive suggestions rather than criticizing my choices or plotting to take control of my assets, and felt a profound sense of gratitude for the healing that had occurred, however painful its genesis. Later, after Matthew had gone to bed and Jennifer was preparing to leave, she handed me a small wrapped package. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. "Just a small thank you for everything." Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with my initials. "I remember you always kept journals when we were growing up," Jennifer said. "You stopped somewhere along the way. I thought maybe you might want to start again. Document this new chapter with the Eastern Clinic and the mentorship program. The thoughtfulness of the gift touched me deeply. Thank you, Jennifer. This is perfect. She hesitated in the doorway. I know I can never fully make amends for what I did, but I want you to know I'm trying to be better, to be worthy of being your daughter. You don't have to earn that, Jennifer. It's not conditional. Maybe not for you. She smiled sadly. But for me, becoming someone you can be proud of again, that matters more than I can say. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table with the new journal open before me. The blank pages seemed to invite reflection on the remarkable journey of the past year, from betrayal to renewal, from crisis to opportunity. I began to write, the words flowing easily after so many years away from this practice. I wrote about the investigation that had threatened everything I'd built, about discovering my daughter's betrayal, about the painful process of protecting myself while leaving room for redemption. I wrote about the unexpected opportunities that had emerged from crisis, the mentorship program, the Eastern Oakridge Clinic, the deeper connections with colleagues and patients. Most of all, I wrote about the complex journey of forgiveness, not as a single act of absolution, but as an ongoing process of balancing accountability with compassion, boundaries with openness. The next morning, I called Dr. Jenkins and accepted his offer to join the Eastern Oakridge Clinic as a consulting physician. I also contacted Dr. Cooper to discuss expanding the mentorship program to include preventive support for physicians, showing early signs of burnout or ethical confusion. At the clinic, I shared my plans with Maria, who enthusiastically agreed to take on more administrative responsibilities. It's about time you expanded your reach, Dr. Anderson. You've got too much to offer to keep it all in one place. That afternoon, between patients, I received a text from Jennifer. Financial literacy workshop for medical students confirmed for next month at the university. They're offering a small stipend. First paid speaking engagement in my new field. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled as I texted back my congratulations. 6 months ago, Jennifer would have considered such a modest achievement beneath her notice. Now she recognized its value as a step toward meaningful work. As I prepared for my last patient of the day, I glanced at the framed medical license on my desk, the tangible symbol of everything I'd fought to preserve. Beside it now stood a photo of my children from Jennifer's graduation, a reminder of the love that had endured despite betrayal, the foundation that remained even when trust was broken. What had begun as an attempt to declare me mentally unfit had instead revealed a different kind of fitness. The resilience to withstand betrayal without becoming bitter, the wisdom to balance accountability with compassion, the strength to rebuild what had been damaged. My daughter had tried to have me declared incompetent, but in the process had discovered her own competence for honest self-reflection and genuine change. As for me, I had discovered that even the deepest wounds could become openings for new growth in my professional life, in my family relationships, and in my understanding of forgiveness, not as weakness, but as perhaps the most demanding form of strength. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.